The island of consequences. You know those moments in life where everything feels like it's falling into place, only to realize you've actually set yourself up for disaster? Yeah, this is one of those stories. Hey, I'm Emily. I'm 40. And if you ask me, that's just the start of realizing you're somehow already halfway through this damn thing called life. People always say your prime is in your 20s, but they're lying. The truth. The older you get, the more you realize everything either feels too late to fix or way too deep to escape from. I have one kid, grown, off at college, living it up, doing what kids do. I should be proud, right? But in reality, I felt stuck in this limbo, like my life was happening around me instead of with me. And that was the first problem. I'd been married for 15 years to a man who felt as distant as the moon. Jake, my husband, was the type to come home, grunt a hello, then disappear into his office, face buried in a screen. It was like I didn't exist. Or worse, like he didn't care that I did. The spark. Long gone. The connection. A ghost of what it used to be. And me. I felt invisible, like an old piece of furniture collecting dust in the corner. But you can only feel invisible for so long before cracks start to show. I wasn't looking for an escape. I wasn't searching for something or someone else. But then life, being the cruel comedian that it is, threw me a curveball. And that curveball had a name. Derek. It started the day he knocked on my door. Hey, I'm Derek. Your new neighbor, he said with a casual grin. Harmless, right? Just a friendly guy introducing himself. But there was something about the way he looked at me. The way he stood a little too close. The way his eyes lingered a second longer than necessary. And that smile. It wasn't just polite. It was charged. Loaded with something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. And I think he knew exactly what he was doing. First it was just small talk. Harmless. But then something changed. Conversations stretched longer, eye contact lingered, and before I even realized it, the air between us felt heavy with something unsaid. A magnetic pull, subtle but undeniable. Meanwhile Jake was... Well, Jake. Too busy, too distracted, too uninterested. And then there was Derek, who noticed me, who saw me. You look nice today, he'd say. His voice carrying a weight that made my skin tingle. How's your day been? Simple words, but the way he said them made me feel like I mattered again. And that's when I knew I was already in trouble. The more time I spent around Derek, the more obvious it became. How hollow my marriage had become. How much I was craving something I hadn't even realized I was missing. The chemistry was undeniable. Every touch, every glance. It sent electricity straight through me. I kept telling myself it was just a harmless flirtation. Just a distraction. But deep down I knew I was lying. Then came that Saturday night. Jake was out. Some work event, another excuse to avoid being home. And Derek. He knocked unannounced. He was standing there in a leather jacket. Hair just messy enough to look effortlessly cool. You alone tonight? He asked, voice smooth, low, dangerous. I should have said no. I should have closed the door. But I didn't. Instead I stepped aside, and he walked in like he belonged there. We talked, but words didn't matter anymore. The space between us disappeared. His hand brushed mine, and the rest happened like it was inevitable. I told myself it wasn't planned, that I hadn't meant to let it go this far. But the truth was I didn't stop it. I didn't want to stop it. And in Derek's arms, I finally felt something again. I felt wanted, felt seen, felt alive. That's the ugly truth of it. I didn't do it out of hatred or revenge. I did it because, for the first time in years, I felt like I mattered. And then, just like that, it was over. And in its place, guilt settled like a weight on my chest. But the worst part, the universe wasn't done with me yet. Because a week later, Jake walked through the door with the biggest grin I'd seen on his face in years. I did it, Tim. I bought us a private island, he said, practically glowing. And blinked. What? A private island? Just for us. I thought we could get away, take some time together. Start fresh, he said, eyes full of excitement. We'll be free. Just you and me. My stomach twisted. I could barely meet his gaze. An island. Fresh start. If only he knew. I forced a smile, swallowing the bile rising in my throat. Sounds great. The island that was never mine. Great, I said, my voice flat, my stomach sinking. But it wasn't great. Not for me. I couldn't even look at Jake the same way anymore. How could I? He was offering me paradise, and I had already sold my soul. But what choice did I have? I had to play along, for the sake of appearances, for the sake of pretending my life wasn't unraveling at the seams. So I smiled. He nodded. I let him tell me all about how perfect this island was going to be. How it would be a fresh start, how everything would be amazing. And all the while I was dying inside. Because how could I sit there, listening to him plan our future, when I knew the truth? When I knew that, in every way that mattered, I had already left. I went through the motions. Checking. Smiling. Pretending. But in the back of my mind, all I could think about was Derek. The rush of being with him, the way he made me feel alive in a way Jake hadn't in years. I was trapped between two lives. The one I was physically living with Jake, and the one I couldn't stop fantasizing about with Derek. Jake had no idea, but I did. Deep down I knew. It was only a matter of time before the truth crashed down around us. Because, as much as I sat at that dinner table every night, pretending nothing had changed, I was already gone. The night before we were supposed to leave for the island, Jake went to bed early. He was excited, already lost in the dream of our perfect getaway. And I could see it in his eyes. He wanted to believe that everything was going to be okay. But it wasn't. And I wasn't the woman he thought I was anymore. I lay awake, my mind racing. I was stuck. The guilt gnawed at me, but the craving, the need to feel something overpowered it. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen for only a moment before I typed the words I couldn't hold back any longer. Come over. I can't take this anymore. I didn't care. I didn't care if it was wrong. I didn't care if it would destroy everything. I just needed to feel alive again. And Derek made me feel like the only woman in the world. Minutes later, the doorbell rang. For a second I hesitated. I almost didn't answer it. Almost. But I couldn't stop myself. I opened the door, and there he was. Derek. That familiar smirk, the heat in his gaze. The way he looked at me like I was something to be devoured. We didn't need words. The air between us was thick, charged, electric. I pulled him inside, and this time there was no stopping it. No hesitation. No second thoughts. His lips crashed into mine, and the world around us ceased to exist. This wasn't just a mistake. This was the moment that changed everything. I wasn't thinking about Jake. I wasn't thinking about the island. I was only thinking about how Derek made me feel. And when morning came, as I lay tangled in the sheets beside him, my body aching in the best way, a realization hit me like a truck. I didn't care about Jake anymore. The island didn't matter. Derek had become the only thing I wanted. But euphoria is fleeting. Because reality came knocking. Literally. The doorbell rang again. Too early. Too soon. My body was still warm from the night before. My mind still hazy with the afterglow. I dragged myself out of bed, heart pounding, confusion settling in my chest. And when I opened the door, Jake was standing there. The moment our eyes met, my blood ran cold. His expression was unreadable. Anger, disbelief, something else. Something darker. You're really going to do this, Sam? His voice was barely above a whisper, like he was trying to hold back the storm raging inside him. Froze. My mind scrambled for an explanation, an excuse, anything that could fix this. But there was nothing. Jake stepped inside. His eyes flicked around the room, taking in the scene, the evidence, and then, without a word, he dropped a stack of papers onto the coffee table. My stomach twisted. Guess what I found out, Em? His voice was cold, sharp. Guess what I've known for weeks now? I swallowed hard, trying to keep my face neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. His jaw clenched, his fists tightening at his sides. Then his voice dropped lower, more dangerous. I know about Derek. Every nerve in my body went numb. I know everything, he continued. And I've been watching you the whole time. Every little moment. My breath caught in my throat. Oh. Jake smirked, but it wasn't his usual smile. It was something cruel. Private investigator, he spat. I had you followed. I watched it all, Em. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. And now it's my turn. The stack of papers sat there like a death sentence. Fixed. Photos. Proof of every moment I thought I'd gotten away with. Felt sick. Jake's calm facade cracked, and for the first time, I saw the full extent of his fury. But beneath the anger, there was something worse. A chilling sort of finality. I bought the island for me, Em. His voice was steady, almost eerily so. Not you. My stomach dropped. I thought you'd be part of it. I thought we could fix things. But I'm done. His eyes locked onto mine, and I saw it. The moment he truly let me go. I don't need you anymore. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg. To tell him I was sorry that we could fix this, that somehow, some way this didn't have to be the end. But I couldn't. Because there was no undoing what had already been done. Jake turned to leave, pausing just long enough to look at me one last time. Have a good life, Em, he said. I'll be fine. Then a smirk. But you'll never forget what you did. The door closed behind him. And just like that, he was gone. I stood there, staring at the empty space where he had been, my entire world crumbling around me. He wasn't just leaving me. He was taking everything. The island. The life we built. His too. And me. I was left with nothing but the wreckage of my own choices. For the first time in years, I felt exactly what I had been trying to escape from all along. Utterly. Completely. Alone.